Ukraine's President Zelensky says there's evidence Russian troops committed hundreds of war crimes during their occupation of Kherson.
22 people have been arrested in connection with a bomb blast on a busy shopping street in Istanbul that killed 8 people and injured at least 79 more. France and Italy continue a dispute over humanitarian rescue ships as Paris and London sign a historic English Channel crossing deal.
Ukraine's President Zelensky has accused Russian forces of committing over 400 war crimes during their occupation of the southern city of Kherson. The allegation is in addition to claims that the retreating troops destroyed key infrastructure facilities before pulling out, leaving a severe humanitarian situation with a lack of water, medicine and bread in the city.
Investigators have already documented more than 400 Russian war crimes and found the bodies of both civilians and soldiers. In the Kherson region, the Russian army left behind the same atrocities as in other regions of our country where it was able to enter. We will find and bring to justice every murderer without a doubt.
As Kherson residents continued to take to the streets with Iranian flags, thanking their armed forces for liberating the city, some had tales of what life had been like under the Russians.
Under Russian occupation, it was quite horrible. You never know what to expect. One day they behave normally, next day they arrest people, those people disappear forever.
They looted all the flats, they destroyed the doors, lived in the flats, took all the electronics equipment. They're thieves.
But as locals showed their relief at the Russian retreat, the reality is that Moscow's forces still control some 70% of the wider Kherson region.
22 people have been arrested in Istanbul for their suspected involvement in Sunday's bomb blast in the city, which killed 8 people and injured at least 79 more. The blast took place around 1620 local time on a busy shopping street in a Taksim Square area. The government has called it a terrorist attack.
As of now, we are assessing that it was an attack of terrorism. At this crossroads, as a result of a female attacker detonating a bomb, based on the information obtained so far.
The blast was caught on camera and shared on social media. Turkey's authorities have blamed the Kurdish Workers' Party for the explosion, but no group has claimed responsibility for the blast.
US President Joe Biden has arrived on the Indonesian island of Bali for the G20 summit. The US leader is expected to hold talks with Chinese President Xi Jinping on Monday, in what will be their first in-person meeting since Biden was elected to the White House.
Yeah, I know Xi Jinping. I spent more time than any other world leader. I know him well. He knows me. There's we have very little misunderstanding. We just got to figure out where the red lines are and what are the most important things to each of us going into the next 2 years.
Biden has met with the leaders of Japan and South Korea to discuss China's assertive posture in the Pacific region. He's also expressed hopes to coordinate a response to North Korea's threatening nuclear and ballistic missile programs.
Long queues at France's crossing with Italy after Paris reinforced its border controls. The move comes after Rome refused to allow a rescue ship to dock. France has sent 500 extra officers to the border because of the dispute over humanitarian ships that rescue migrants in the Mediterranean. This comes after the Ocean Viking charity rescue ship, which had been at sea for nearly 3 weeks, eventually docked in the French port of Toulon after Paris reluctantly took it in. Rome's new far-right-led government has vowed that Italy will no longer be the primary port of entry for migrants leaving on boats from Libya.
Italy is not keeping a commitment that is fundamental to the European solidarity mechanism. We won't keep our intended part, which was to welcome the 3,000 migrants currently on Italian territory.
Meanwhile, France and the UK have signed a historic deal in an attempt to stop people from crossing the English Channel. At least 40,000 people have made the treacherous crossing so far this year. Reports suggest it will involve an increase in annual payments from Britain to France of between 68 and 79 million euros. The fund is meant to boost beach controls and new technology to detect boats before they launch. And for the first time, British officials are expected to be stationed in French control rooms.
Slovenia has elected its first female head of state, liberal rights activist Nataša Pirc-Musar. Musar won a runoff on Sunday against the country's conservative former foreign minister, Anza Logar, by 54% to 46%. Her win is a boost for the Liberal bloc after the centre-left coalition won April's parliamentary elections. Musar has previously said she would like to see her country connect to, quote, core Europe and countries that believe in human rights.
Hundreds of protesters have gathered in Belgrade, demanding that authorities take action to improve air quality in the capital. Organizers said toxic air kills thousands of people each year in Serbia. On Sunday, protesters carried banners reading, "Be part of the solution and not the pollution," and "The air is dangerous." Serbia is facing multiple environmental problems following decades of neglect. In addition to poor air quality, the country is also dealing with poor waste management and polluted rivers. Tens of thousands of people have marched through Mexico's capital to protest moves to overhaul one of the country's most trusted and prized institutions, its electoral authority. The massive turnout was a strong rebuke of President López Obrador, who claims the institution favors Mexico's elite. Critics say his reforms threaten the electoral authority's independence and will make it more political. The president considers himself a victim of electoral fraud, even though it was the electoral authority that confirmed his landslide victory in 2018.
We have reached the 8 billion milestone and global population growth won't stop soon. Population distribution is unequal, with more than half of the world's population living in Asia. However, Professor of Demography Raya Mudarak says greenhouse gas emissions have to do with income levels, not population distribution.
The top 10% in terms of net wealth is actually responsible for about 50% of the greenhouse gas emissions. And they only account for, say, 770 million persons in the world, whereas the bottom 50%, which is roughly account for about 4 billion people in the world, they emit only 12%.
The relation between human activity and climate change has long been proven. The environmental impact of population growth will depend on how many more we are. Estimations vary from a peak population of less than 9 billion to over 12 billion around 2100. But it will mostly depend on whether our behaviors fuel global warming or slow it down, with some countries having more responsibilities at play than others. Professor Mutarak says humanity already proved it could step up and provide food, shelter, and energy when population increases. But she says we need to do better regarding equal access to resources. Less developed countries are not only lacking resources, they are also the most affected by climate change. Their financial capacities are less likely to be able to cope with its consequences. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change predicts about 3% of the world population will be displaced by climate change by 2050. Large-scale forced migrations could greatly undermine efforts put towards development. And this even if the 2 degrees Celsius threshold set by the Paris Agreement is respected. Scientists warn extreme scenarios of more than 4 degrees are not to be excluded. Héloïse Urvois, Euronews.